Welcome to my mining company financial model for development stage companies. I've looked at quite a few mining companies at development stage, including for copper development companies, Candente Copper, Nevada Copper, Yellowhead Mining, Catalyst Copper, Northern Dynasty Minerals, Augusta Resource, and Lumina Copper. On the gold development companies, I've looked at Pretium Resources, IDM Mining, and Seabridge Gold. I have chosen Western Copper and Gold as the base case financial model because the feasibility study anticipates both a heap leach operation and a concentrator operation. I'm neither advocating nor discouraging an investment in Western Copper and Gold Corporation. It is merely a very good example to illustrate how I build mining financial models and for development stage companies. Okay, let's get to the model. First worksheet is the title page. Every financial model I build contains a title page that contains a summary of key input and assumptions. Including a title page is good practice, and I recommend you include one too. You can see below that I show the pricing scenario I used and key commercial operation dates, start dates. In this case, the opening balance sheet is not known for December 31st. So I outline the assumptions I use to arrive at it. For mining companies, the opening balance sheet is not key. It's more the construction costs, how long it's going to take to construct, etc., etc. I've also included a 1% First Nations gross revenue royalty. That's completely my estimate. It wasn't in the feasibility study. I know they are negotiating with the First Nations in the area. The second worksheet is called the setup. Pretty standard here. Let's just get to it there. So, pretty standard stuff. The intent is that as I build the model, I want to enter the company name only once. The third worksheet is navigation. This ties in with the input worksheet. All of the input for the model, all of it is in the input worksheet, with the exception of what is in the just described setup worksheet. Everything in the navigation worksheet takes you to the input worksheet. Let's try a few. Okay, mining equipment. So we'll look at mining equipment. So here is mining equipment. It's listed in the capital cost section, and this is how the cash capital expense will be spent. I assume it's over a 48-month period, and it is linear or fixed amount. Let's also look at long-term debt. So long-term debt is right here. Takes you to long-term debt. Refi. Let's also look at financing. So one of the things I've included in this model is a refi option, as you can see right here. So 252 months, that's basically based on the length of operation, rounded to the nearest year. Financing, we're assuming construction financing about 10%. We're not going to make interest payments during construction. They'll just get added to the ongoing debt. There is a placement fee of 2% here that's calculated. And the input is equity to total capital is 40%. 40% equity, 60% debt. Now you'll see here the construction interest rate is 10%. That'll be until COD. And actually, and I have an input for how long past COD. And COD is commercial operation date or the date that the concentrator starts. Interest rate would go from 10, which we anticipate would be the finance rate during construction, to 5.25% is what we're anticipating would be the refinance rate 12 months after commercial operations. It's probably a pretty rosy option. There's also a finance fee of about $1 million. That's an input, and that can be changed. The other thing is, one of the things we have in here is we can turn on and off the dashboard. This is the dashboard. These rows right here. And that's kind of a summary. Right? So on my dashboard I have, in 2021 that would be my revenue. That's because each heap leach operation will begin in the fall of that year. So we anticipate $21 million of revenue in 2021 and $115 million of revenue in 2022. That's still under the heap leach only. Then in 2023, in April of 2023, the concentrator will start, so that would be 8 months of concentrator production based on these prices right here. This is currently the pricing that's set in the model. That can be changed over here, and this pricing is based on December 1st, 2017 spot prices, which is basically 4 or 5, 6 days old. So if we want to turn off navigation, we can turn off the dashboard, right? And so I can see a lot more on my screen. And go back here and turn it back on, right? So now I did mention that all of the input here is in this input worksheet. In fact, there's 2,500 rows. Nearly 2,500 rows. The question arises that you might ask is, why is all the input on just one worksheet? Simple answer. Easy to make formulas, easy to trace, and easy to troubleshoot formulas. That in and of itself is reason enough alone. There are other compelling reasons, but that is good enough for you. If you want to make a lot of work for yourself, make a lot of worksheets. I do have a lot of other worksheets, but they are merely reports from the input worksheet. Only one input worksheet does create problems for printing. I've solved that with a print macro. It makes many worksheets with associated bookmarks. There's a macro in there that I'll probably show you later. So, input are numbers that you are expected to change. I have highlighted in those numbers in either blue and red. Now, blue numbers are standard input, easy to change. Red numbers are input too, and can be changed, but are often linked to other input. You'll notice that if you change the year the concentrator comes online, and let's just do that right now, we're anticipating in this model, we say that concentrators have come online in 2023. So if I change that to 2024, let's say a year later, let's just do that right here to 0 to 4, right? And enter. You'll notice that a lot of other input changes too. Right? A lot of these. Yeah, that changes. They're kind of linked. I know that if I delay my start date by a year, and I know today that I'm going to change it by a year, that I'll delay my IPO by a year. I'll delay my construction start date by a year, assuming it's still going to be built in the anticipated 48 months. So let's just undo that and change that back to normal. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can change the red input, but while you use this model for the first little while, until you understand it fully, play around with the blue input. Okay, let's try changing some real input here. Now, let's say we change that back to 2023. Still doing capital. There we go. Now, we're back at the original input, no input have changed. So let's suppose we didn't refinance. You know, what's the impact? What's the impact on a couple of things? Now, what I've noticed here, or basically for a mine, is going to require, let's look at this summary here. In order to build this mine, construction cost from the feasibility study is $2.4 million or $2.5 million basically. There's going to be interest during construction. Because we're going to do an IPO or anticipate doing an IPO, there's going to be a contingency, how much there, or contingency, or an over allotment. There's a commission there'll be pre-IPO expenses, there'll be a placement fee that I mentioned before, and there'll be working capital. So the total required is $2.9 billion. 2.9 billion Canadian dollars, or in this case, it's US dollars. Excuse me. 2.9 billion US dollars. Now, we anticipate we're going to get 60% from debt over here, so that's 1.74 billion in debt, and for equity, we're going to get $1.2 billion. And that's based on. So in order to raise that, you're going to have to deliver a return to the original IPO investors, right? So let's look at, right now, for the IPO investors to get their money back, let's look at the model schematic drawing here. Okay, here's the IPO investors. They're putting their money in. This illustrates the money can go both ways. Put the money, it's going to go to an investment bank. They're going to take an 8% commission. It's going to go into this common equity band. That's going to fund the company, where it's going to build the mine, and then when the mine is built, it's going to start generating excess cash. When it starts generating excess cash, that money is going to flow back to the investors in the way of dividends. So right here, point where IPO investors, so they're going to invest their $1 billion, and then about 4 or 5 years later, they are going to start getting dividends because the company no longer needs that cash. It's generating positive cash flow. Let's go back to the input worksheet. So, if they want a 12% return on the $1.153 billion they're going to raise, there's going to have to be that many shares issued and at that share price. The model figures that out. That's based on a 12% discount rate. Now this 12%, as you see, it's blue, therefore it's input. So in the event the guy says, no, I've looked at this project, or the investment bankers are going to price this IPO, and they're going to look at it and they're going to say, no, I think it's a little bit more risky, and let's suppose they said it was 14. So what happens? Well, if it's more risk, that means the IPO investors are going to want to own more of the company. They're going to want a bigger slice of the pie to accommodate their return. So let's just see what happens here. We go to 14%. So the share price, they're going to have to issue quite a bit more shares, right? Same net proceeds from IPO. They're going to get a bigger piece of the company. And as a result of the bigger piece of the company, at $3.45, they're going to get a 14% by way of dividends. That's how this model works. Okay, so let's go back. Change price. Okay. Now, let's go back to our 12%, which is the default. Right? 1, 2. Enter. There you go. Takes a second for this to update. Well, there you go. Okay. So change by share prices. Yeah. So that's based on these prices right here: $3.07, $3.07 for copper, $1,279 for gold, $16.30 for silver, and $7.26 per pound for molybdenum. Now let's look at. Now this is based on spot prices, right? Now let's have a little look at the feasibility study base case. It had different prices. So you can see this is what they are as of December 1st, 4 or 5 days ago. Spot prices only, right? Well, let's look at what prices were used in the feasibility base case, right? And it takes a second for it to update here. And they had $3.16 for copper, quite a bit higher price for gold, and easily $10 higher for silver, and double the price for molybdenum. Now, as a result of just those price changes alone, if the investors wanted 12% return, and they anticipated those were going to be the long-term copper prices, the long-term gold price, the long-term silver price, the long-term molybdenum price, they'd be prepared to pay $11.61, and they'd get their 12% return on their money by way of dividends, right? So the other thing is, there's another button here called zero. Never worry about pressing the zero button. Zero just clears everything up, and it shows the intent of that is, as a result of the one change that I make, right? What will be the change of that one change? So let's say if I go, instead of looking at, if we go to change a pricing scenario, in the feasibility study they looked at some other prices, and they looked at spot prices, and that was around 2013 during the feasibility study. They had some pretty good prices. Yeah, $3.57 for copper, $16.58 for gold, almost $30 for silver, and aluminum was near $12. So if that were the price, the IPO could be priced at $14.86. So you can see the sensitivity of prices on your IPO price and how many shares have to be issued. This is a percentage of the company that you basically have to give away. When you go to raise money, you're going to have to give a chunk of the company away to the IPO investors. They're going to own a chunk of it, and they'll be able to get 43% of all the dividends. So as prices are lower, you're going to have to give them more of the company. Now, right now, if you look at this model, let's go back to the standard that we looked at, spot prices. I'll go right there. Takes a second for it to update. And I'll go to zero again, because that's what we're at. Okay, now, as you can see, there's an OK here. That means the balance sheet's checked. It's I check a lot of things in that model. Make sure cash balances and each one of these, the yearly FS, the quarterly FS, and the monthly FS, they all roll independently. And they make sure that cash at the end of the mine life, many times, that's consistent throughout the same, or consistent throughout all three. So there's some pretty serious checks in here to make sure that there's no errors in the model. Okay, so this has to be okay, that has to be okay, and that has to be okay. This okay right here, that just ensures that you're at, because we said we had a target of, equity to total capital is 40%, or 40% equity and 60% debt. So, let's suppose we changed our mind, or for one reason or other, banks won't accept, they want 50%. So that's going to affect us, at least the share price. We're going to have to raise more money, raise more equity, less debt. So let's do that. Let's go enter. Okay. Now you see this? This says click, because what this is measuring, make sure your debt equity ratio is at the 50-50, and it's not. So we have to do a lot that goes into that. This takes about a minute or two. We can click it right here. That's probably the best place to click it. What that does is that's going to modify the time when the bank will take over financing the whole project. So the equity holders are going to have to finance the project longer than anticipated. So it's going to run the macro, and it takes a second. It's going to take some more. There it goes. He's trying to get 50% by the adjuster here. And when it's done, it says, okay, so if the debt equity ratio went from 40 to 60%, 40 to 50%, instead of the IPO being priced at $5.40, which is what it was before, it would be priced at $3.81 US dollars per share. Okay, so whenever you run any scenario, you got to make sure there's an okay here. That'll always be okay. This should always be okay unless you do something really funky with pricing. And this will change quite routinely. If you change your construction costs, if you change the cost before COD, that number will change. It takes about a minute. It takes about 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Sometimes you have to click it twice. At most, you have to click it 3 times. Here we're going to hit the 0 button again. So this is what the project would look like under December 1st spot prices if it was 50% equity instead of 40% equity. Okay, so there's a lot of input in here you can change, but the key input is really your construction costs. And we can also make some major changes too. This is heap leach original life of mine production schedule. We can make changes to that too. Right now, change the production rate. We can increase it or decrease it. We can change when it starts. Right now, it's anticipated. This is this production schedule. This production schedule is based on directly from the feasibility study for the heap leach. Now, if you want to see the concentrator life of mine project, it's right there, and we can change it too. You just change it down here. Change the month that it starts. Change the production rate. These are numbers. If you want it to be exactly 21 years, you put it in there. Right now, it's unchanged. You can change that. If we change it to as below. As below. It's going to change a couple of little things here. Yeah, slight little changes here. Rack bill price will change. Probably not. Yeah, a little bit of change. 261. Let's just put it back to where it was. We'll use the exact, and it determines the date that it's going to start based on that, based on your new production schedule. You can start in January, February, you can change your month, January to, a lot you can change. Okay, so next thing we're going to look at, and so I'm just going to close this file and restart it so we don't get messed up and maybe things that we change it. So let's just close that file and open it up again. Work. So we're going to look at metal streams. Now, metal streams were something that started, I think, about probably 10 years ago. And they're a way to reduce the required equity raise. What happens is, for let's say the secondary metals, in this case, silver and molybdenum, right? This is a story about copper. But silver, there's always a little bit of silver and molybdenum. We can look at how much that would be at the current spot prices. We can look at single page executive summary. Okay, so pay metal. So that's about there's a total of, at those current prices, based on the production that is anticipated, based on the amount that's in the ground, and how much you're going to produce, and how much they're going to pay you, because there's a certain pay metal quantities. They don't always pay for 100%. So basically about $2.1 billion worth of molybdenum and $500,000 worth of silver based on these prices, the spot prices of December 1st, 2017. Now what you can do is you can sell a contract. You say, I'll sell you, and let's just have it. We'll go to metal streams. Metal streams. What we're going to do is we're going to turn our molybdenum stream on, and we're going to sell 100% of it. Okay? 100% of it. And we're going to sell it to them at $2 a pound, even though it's going to sell for $7 a pound. The reason we're not going to sell it to them for nothing is, and salt payment, right? So this is actually set up that if we sold 100% of it at $2 a pound, they'd be able to resell that all. Now, if they're not just going to, out of the goodness of their heart, give you a lump sum payment. They're going to give you a lump sum payment of $300 million. So what happened here, you can see this reduced by almost a little bit more than that, which is fine. Now we're also going to have to, we have to put that right there. Got to make sure we're going to stay at the 40 and 60% equity. The way this model works, it assumes that a metal stream is actually preferred share capital. That's technically not correct, but for the purposes of internal rates of return and cash flow and how the bank would look at it, you're going to get that stream before you get the money from the bank. So the bank is going to deem that as indirectly a form of equity. And that's how I put it in preferred share capital, so I consider it equity. It's not a perfect accounting treatment of it, but it's close enough for right now. You get into some nasty accounting with derivatives, and this just keeps it simple. So let's just see, if we just sold all of our molybdenum, we're checking molybdenum loan. We're also selling to them at a point, because there's risk involved for them. They don't know if they're going to get, if the mine's going to be built. But their return is to say, they want a 14% return on money. So for the $300 million that they're going to give you for your molybdenum stream, for 100% of it, they will give you $300 million if you promise to pay them. Let's see let's go back into the navigation. We're going to metal streams. Okay, so we just did that, right? So they're going to give us a lump sum payment of $300 million before we construct, before we do our equity raise. So we don't have to raise. We previously had to raise $1 billion. Now we only have to raise. $761 million net proceeds from the IPO. So we reduced that by $300 million. Now they're going to ask for. This is a very low rate, but suppose they wanted 14%. They want a 14% return. So they're actually going to be able to take that over the course of the mine because they want a 14% return. They're going to get the equivalent cash received of $1.5 million. So it's a good deal for them, but it's a good deal for us because our IPO price is going to be higher. If you are an existing shareholder, it's good for you. You are surrendering. You are giving up value of the company, right? But you can, in some cases, increase the share price. So that's just molybdenum alone. Let's just have another look in. Let's look at our silver stream. We're going to say we're going to sell some silver, and this silver. We're going to turn that one on. Just say, let's have a little bit of fun here. Let's suppose these guys said, well, silver, these guys only want 13.5 because I've already set this at 14, but let's say it was 13.5. They've decided they only want 13.5%. Let's hit sell payment. Okay, so target is 13.5. So this should come down to 13.5. Might take a little second. It should get there. There it goes. Taking a little bit. All right. There it is. So they're going to pay us a little bit more. Now, they're going to pay us $89 million, but we're going to surrender $380 million over the course of the life of the mine. Now, what happens? So they're going to give us it's not that much, right? So as a result of just selling those two streams, our share price goes to $571. Let's just see if that's correct. Now, I've also generated this table way over here. Stream on B, 562. Okay, let's see. 562. Oh yeah, that was based on 14. Actually, let's just try 14 again. I stood for 14, so let's solve it. And that payment should go down because they want more, right? 85 million from 90 or whatever it was before. So they want more. You see there's more risk there. Now remember, this stream is paid before we raise the equity, before the IPO, 2 months. I've set it up. We're raising it, 1 month before the IPO. So that's well before the mine was built. Now, if the mine was built, this internal rate, if the mine was built and producing 6 months or 8 months, that internal rate of return would probably could be as low as 6 or 7%. But it's unlikely you'd sell on the stream at 6% because all your risk, or most of your risk, is behind you. Okay, close. That's metal streams. Okay, let's check that. So that's, now the price is $566 here, right? Change that. So according to, this is done properly. That price over there. Unless we change the unless. That price. $562. Let's go and have a look and see. Well, stream on D. $562. It's like Christmas around here. Okay, so what that's saying is, as a result of, I'm just selling my silver stream and my molybdenum stream. I'm keeping my copper stream and my gold stream. Price would go to $562, which we just showed it would then. Now, these three tables right here, that's pretty advanced here when we're selling. We start selling a little bit of our gold too. This number over here is at if it was anticipated, the price of gold was going to be $1,750 an ounce for the life of this mine. And that was our view, and it was the view of those that were selling the stream. Then, we could sell 34, not the full 100% of our gold stream, 34% of it, and we wouldn't have to raise, and we wouldn't need an IPO. And you'll see as prices go down, this goes up. There's a lot involved in here, and this was really tricky to model. But it works, and it works via a macro. And these tables do not auto-update, by the way. So you set the model, and then what would happen is you set your pricing scenarios, and you would do something like this, and you would go developer, macros, and that's what produces those streams. We would say, I want to run this macro right here. You could run. It takes about 4 hours to run. So do you want to proceed? No is the safe answer, macro. So I'm going to hit no. But normally I would hit 4 and let that macro, and it would produce those 4 tables. Here's your yearly FS, by the way, also. Should be a yearly financial statements. Now you can kind of look and see. These are the first 2 years of the heap leach operation, right? So there's no profitability in that. Mind you, that heap leach operation does contribute quite a bit of cash or startup cash when you need it, and reduces, it helps quite a bit for the first 2 years. It helps a lot over that. I think it's $1 billion. We can actually know what it's going to input. Let's go to navigation and life of mine pricing schedule. Here it is. Okay, so over the life of that mine, let's go to the little heap leach operation that costs about $175 million to build or something. It produces, let's see the total over there, it's not showing up, but it looks like it produces about 1.3 or $1.4 billion in gross revenue. Not much expenses in that either. So, anyways, now I think I'll show you the print macro. I'll show you the print macro. Print macro is, once you've got everything nailed down, you've got all your input the way you want it, you would run your 4-hour macro, And then the very next thing you would do is you would run development macros. You run this macro. And this is, here's a big warning. What you do is you've got your file, you set it up. You take that file and you put it in another folder because it's going to destroy the file because you've got to set up a print macro. So it only takes about 10 minutes to do this, or 4 minutes for that to run. So do you want to? No is a safe answer. So hit no. And that, your file is not going to change. So basically, this is my financial model for copper and gold development companies. And Western Copper and Gold provided a really good example for it. So I can build financial models. I can build one for your company. I can do a lot. So thanks for paying attention. That's the model for today. If you need a comment, contact information is right here on the title page. I am giving you the full Excel model, but it's only the terms of use are in here. This is the license you have is a trial license. If you want to get a commercial license, the price is $3,500 Canadian. Well, that price is subject to change without notice. Discounts may be available. There's also an educational license as well. But you're allowed to use this model for 4 hours. After 4 hours of cumulative use, you've used this Excel file again, or any derivative of this model, you're required to make or purchase a commercial use license. Anyways, as I said, thanks again. Contact information is right there. You know how it works. Bye for now.